What's up again, everybody? As we close in on Pro Tour Baltimore, the question of what in the heck meta are we in right now is, kind of tantalizingly closer to being answered. And that's what we're going to talk about today, because the meta right now is, well, let's just say it, it's weird. It's strange, and I don't think anyone quite has put their finger on what it is. If you were to tell me that you had all the answers and you could tell me exactly what the meta is right now, I'm sorry, but I don't believe you, because I don't think anyone has that answer, and I literally mean anyone. Here's why. Up until this point, we have had only, smaller, more kind of spread out, perhaps even localized tournaments to go off of. And outside of that, we've only had, in-team testing. If you're part of a team, you test within your team and you come up with your solutions and your, summations, if you will, from that premise. And these are some of the results that we've seen. So for example, here is the Realm Min-Max game Chicago Brawl top 8. And we can, of course, break down numbers and look at conversion percentage, and that is all very well and good, but I'm not going to do it in this video. So sound off in a comment below if you would like me to do that, and in fact, I'll put it on my spreadsheet, and then I'll share it with y'all like I did with the previous tournaments. But this is the breakdown. Look at the difference in heroes. There are quite a variety of heroes. We have 2 Azaleas, we have an Azuri, we have a single Oldhim, we have Lexi, Briar, Icelander, just a casual Icelander there, and Dash. And then you compare that to what happened this past weekend at SCG Con, and you have 2 Oldhims, an Azalea and Azuri. You have a Bravo this time, kind of supplanting the Briar from before, if you will. We have a Dash again. We've got another Lexi, and this time we have a Dromai, kind of taking the spot of Icelander in a way. And you look at these, and by the way, kudos to the graphics that were put together, both by Min-Max here, put this together during the stream, and Mansant put this together while he was there covering SCG Con. You look at these results and you think, okay, well, this is hugely varied and widespread and kind of hard to pin down. And I think, yeah, to some degree it is. I also think that these results are difficult to take without context. It's difficult to point to this and say, well, obviously these heroes that are represented here, and of course these heroes that are represented here, this being right after the release of the new set Outsiders, and these heroes being a month outside of the new set Outsiders. These are your answers for your top heroes. And I don't necessarily think that's the case, because again, we're looking at these 2 smaller tournaments and these results particularly, and saying that these are the heroes based on the tournament results of, in this case, it was like a 92-person tournament, and in this case, it was like I think it was like 115 or 120-person tournament. So these 2 tournaments can provide us some clues as to what the meta looks like, but I don't think they tell us the full story. And here's a couple of things to think about before I give you my top 8 predictions that we're going to see at this upcoming Pro Tour. I'll literally give you the top 8 heroes. I'm going to make a prediction and try to guess to see how close I can get. I don't believe that I will get it all perfectly, and I don't think, honestly, just about anyone can, unless you just really hope and then get lucky. But I'll give you mine here in a moment. In this tournament, the Realm Gaming Min-Max Games Chicago Brawl 10K, we saw a record low number of Icelanders, a small number of Oldhims, and a record high number of Dromai players and Azalea players, which is quite interesting when you think about how that breaks down and how we see these results kind of finish out. Less Oldhim players, with an Oldhim, character being incredibly steadfast, perhaps is a good way to put it. He's consistent. He is perhaps to some a little boring, but he gets the job done in a lot of respects. And there were a low number of those. Also an incredibly low number of Icelanders here. And that could either speak to a variety of the matchups that Iyslander has in this new meta, or it could speak to people wanting to try the new heroes. And that is what we saw a good bit of. We saw a good bit of Azalea being played. And of course, these results came right after the release of the set, Outsiders. So Azalea got a lot of more tools. And this is also a strange result because the #1 represented hero at this tournament was Dromai, and Dromai did not make a cut to the top 8, but you could perhaps chalk that up to either players that just picked up Dromai. It could be that the scene there is more casual because it's more localized and perhaps a little bit more casual. It could be that the Dromai players just ran into bad matchups or just didn't have decks sort of teched out for the new meta. Could be a variety of things, but the fact that there is no Dromai there is quite intriguing. Now, you go to the sort of overall breakdown here, and we again saw large numbers of Dromai and Azalea, and at the same time, we saw a few more Oldems, and now a few more Oldems convert into the top 8. And again, I do think that Oldhim is a little bit slept on in a format that he can kind of just go into and stake his claim in a way. It's kind of crazy to think that Oldhim is just so consistent no matter what you really take away from him. I guess he hasn't had as much taken away as Iyslander. But that being said, he's so consistent and he can just stake his claim that it's hard for me to believe that Oldhim just doesn't have like a spot here in the meta. Now, other things to note in this result, your casual Bravo shows up, pops in. Azuri across both of these top 8s made it into the top 8, and that is something of note because I want to point out that both of those deck lists were doing very similar things and had very similar plans and sort of matchup ideas based on the way that they built their decks, which tells me that Azuri definitely has a place in mid-level tournaments and possibly even at Pro Tour. And then you have a dash that pops in both instances. We know that this dash, I believe we saw it on the stream. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments below. I believe we saw that this dash was leaning towards aggressive, but I think it was a hybrid build. And I couldn't tell you what this dash specifically is, but the fact that dash has the versatility of playing one way or the other, kind of going hybrid, is a quite good sign. And then we have Lexi in both tournaments being represented, and it's interesting because I've heard a lot of dialogue lately that Lexi is really kind of down in some respects, even though Lexi got some tools in Outsiders being a ranger. And I would disagree, and I think that these results in some ways say that disagrees, because obviously the 1 seed going into the tournament, top 8 here, was a Lexi player. And yes, Lexi didn't end up picking up the win. Oldhim did, and Azalea picked up the win here, of course. But that being said, I think that there's a lot of tools and there's a lot of ways that you can punish and push Lexi to punish other heroes, I should say, in this meta. So what does this all boil down to? To me, it boils down to these heroes. I think if I had to point to 8 heroes that we're going to see in the top 8 of this this upcoming Pro Tour Baltimore, here's what I would say. I think we can Windmill Slam guarantee that 2 Oldems at least make it into the top 8. At least that's how I feel. I feel, and perhaps I'm over-representing Oldhim in my mind, but I feel that Oldhim is an incredibly solid choice into the entire field. I feel like there's plus matchups or even matchups in so many different respects, almost across the board when it comes to the way that this field is kind of pairing out. And so I would think that at least 2 Oldems are going to make that top cut. I will also concede that I think we're going to have 1 Azalea and at least 1 Lexi in the top as well, because I do think that there are enough tools in their tool belt to just straight up get them there. I think that we have at least 1 Dromai also make the cut. Here's the thing about Dromai. I feel like there's always Dromai players that say that Dromai has plus matchups, and there's always Dromai haters that say that Dromai has a bunch of minus matchups. But I actually think that the truth lies more towards the plus matchups than people want to admit. The unfortunate thing is that it's incredibly difficult, in my opinion, to execute some of those plus matchups, and therefore they feel like minus matchups. And that's the interesting thing about the hero. I feel like Dromai has a really interesting connection to Iyslander in that respect. I think both heroes felt that same way to me, as they both feel incredibly complex, but once you find their lines, things get a lot easier, perhaps easier, or the plus matchup, this is the way I say it, the plus matchup looks a lot more plus or feels a lot more plus. So I think we get a Dromai. So we have 2 Oldhams, we have 2 Rangers, 1 Lexi and 1 Azalea, and a Dromai. That's 5 at least there. And then from this point, I think we have some interesting dark horse kind of picks to make. I find it quite shocking, and I'm going to come back to this tab really quick. I find it quite shocking that Iyslander has fallen off as, hugely as she has. Prove me wrong at Pro Tour by playing Iyslander and getting to the top, and Michael Hamilton very well could do that. And you could say, well, it's Iyslander, or you could say, well, it's Michael Hamilton. The funny thing to me, too, is that Iyslander fundamentally still has capabilities of just kind of going toe-to-toe, bleeding down the life totals, and then playing the end game that she's become known for. And to me, I will say that if Michael Hamilton plays Iyslander, there's an Iyslander in the top 8. Is that a cop-out? Tell me in a comment, is that a cop-out? Did I just cop out there? I will say this too, though. I think that one Iyslander will make the cut into the top, because I do fundamentally believe that Iyslander is still there. And that leaves 2 heroes. And I'm going to give you 2 heroes that I feel that you may not necessarily kind of expect. And one of them is Kano. Kano's interesting because if there's less Iyslander in the field, I think Kano feels okay. I think Kano feels okay into a variety of the heroes that I've mentioned thus far, and I think Kano can actually do some work into a variety of those heroes, because a lot of those heroes are dropping Arcane Barrier in one way, shape, or form, or they feel like they don't necessarily need Arcane Barrier. And I think Kano, especially in the hands of a very good Kano player, has the very solid chance of spiking into the top 8. And so I'm giving you Kano as one of the top 8. So again, we've got Oldhams, we've got 2 Rangers, we've got a Dromai, an Iyslander, a Kano. That's going to be 7 out of the top 8. Now, before I give you my 8th, I want you to go down in the comments below and tell me what you think would be a super solid 8th pick, and then I'm going to give you mine. All right, I feel like easy slam dunks picks for this final spot would be things like Dash. We talked about it on these previous pictures. Dash, I feel like, is a super solid, consistent across both of these tournaments and a variety of other classic constructed tournaments and just side events and things that have been played out. Dash feels like a solid pick. You could also say Azuri, because Azuri is kind of performing in that same way, showing a little bit of consistency there. But I'm going to give you a weird dark horse pick, and this is all based on the conjecture that Dromai is better into the field than people are giving it credit for, or perhaps everyone just feels that this is the case and therefore they're going to run Dromai. I think Dorinthia could actually cut its way into the top 8, because I actually, and having played that matchup a good bit from the Dromai side, I very much don't like playing against Dorinthia. And Dorinthia is one of those things, again, in the hands of a great Dorinthia player, you, in a lot of respects, need to be very scared and very cautious and very, patient. And you have to really think about your blocks, and that can be jarring if you haven't done it in a while. And I definitely think that it's quite possible that we see a great Dorinthia player just kind of curb stomp a little bit into a field of dragons. That one is like a spicy side pick, but I'll give you that one as my 8th. All of this to say, I think the meta is in a very open spot right now, and I also think that it's incredibly hard to pin down exactly what it's going to look like. So take all of this for a grain of salt, and tell me what you think about the meta in a comment below, because I am curious to see what your opinions are going into this next phase of Flesh and Blood's competitive history, if you will, with Pro Tour number 3. If you're going, sound off in a comment below, and maybe we can meet up, because I will be there doing some commentary. So maybe we can meet up while I'm not doing the commentary. We could play some games. I'm gonna bring some. I'll bring a Blitz deck. I'll bring a UPF deck. Maybe we can get some side games going. If you enjoyed the video, make numbers climb slightly higher. And as always, thanks for watching.